Thank you, Chairman Cole and Ranking Member McGovern and the members of the committee. I'm here in strong opposition to H.R. 1. I'm sure you've heard the Democratic members refer to it as the Polluters Over People Act rather than the Republican version of Lower Energy Costs Act, and that's because we really do believe that this puts polluters over people. And I do think that this bill is dangerous legislation that would make energy dirtier, less reliable, and more expensive. And I listened to what my colleague on the Energy and Commerce Committee said. I don't think, maybe voters want to change in November, but I don't think that this is the type of change that the American people want, because it's going to hurt them. It's less environmental protection, less health and safety. Frankly, there's not a single bedrock environmental law that this bill does not try to undermine in an attempt to give us as many handouts as possible to the fossil fuel industry. And H.R. 1 is not in all of the above energy bill. It's not going to lower costs for Americans. Instead, it's a giveaway to polluters to increase profits for the oil and gas industry. But primarily, it puts the health and welfare of all Americans at risk by gutting environmental and public health laws and completely ignoring the worsening climate crisis. Now, I'm not going to go through the list, but you see efforts to gut NEPA, to gut the Clean Air Act, to gut the Clean Water Act. All these bills were done on a bipartisan basis. Many of them were done years ago when Richard Nixon was president, as a Republican president. So these are not, I consider it pretty radical when you start to go against, bedrock environmental laws like NEPA and the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. The bill rubber stamps the construction of new natural gas pipelines. It removes the requirement that liquefied natural gas exports be determined to be in the public interest before being sent overseas, which will lead to more American LNG being sent to our adversaries, including China. Now, again, what's wrong with having a review at whether LNG exports are in the public interest? Because we know that many times if that LNG is sent overseas, it raises the price of natural gas here in the United States. So that's one of the reasons that we have this public interest requirement. It simply makes sense. It's common sense. It's not anything unusual. It's common sense. And the bill also repeals a home electrification rebate program that will lower energy bills for the American people. H.R. 1 repeals important environmental programs that were enacted last year that will help us move away from our dangerous dependence on fossil fuels. For example, the methane emissions reduction program that curbs methane leaks and excess pollution from the oil and gas industry and ensures that polluters, not taxpayers, pay for their wasted methane. Now, again, my colleague on the committee said that he doesn't like command and control. And he remembers, I'm sure, that when we had the hearing on this, I pointed out that this methane reduction program is not command and control. One could argue that the provision in Build Back Better maybe had some command and control elements, but we changed that. We changed that so that basically we allowed independent small producers time to get their permits. It's not a tax, it's not even really a fee. It's a penalty if you don't follow the rules and capture your methane and recycle it. And we worked with the small independent producers so that they wouldn't have to pay a fee or pay a tax, and that if they couldn't get their permit on time because some said the EPA was taking too long, then there is no penalty until they get the permit. This was a common sense approach to methane reduction. It was not command and control. Another is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which invests in the deployment of clean energy projects in order to cut down on greenhouse gas pollution. That's repealed. And again, my Republican colleagues claim to be for all of the above energy, but this bill is a blatant attack on clean energy. There's nothing in here, in my opinion, that's going to help move us towards clean energy. Now, the last thing I wanted to say, and I do want to commend Chair Rogers for going through regular order for the most part on the bills that are included in here. What you said is absolutely true. But in the same vein, I would ask you, as members of the Rules Committee, to give us an open rule. We actually saw this in practice when this committee passed a modified open rule on H.R. 21 earlier this year. That was a 3-page bill, and 79 amendments were considered on the House floor. H.R. 1 is 174 pages long, with 65 substantive legislative sections spanning 5 different committees of jurisdiction. And I think it deserves the same opportunity for rank and file members to deliberate and improve the bill that members received on H.R. 21. So, let me give you an example. One of the amendments from our Health Subcommittee Chair, Ms. Eshu, deals with refineries using hydrofluoric acid. This was very contentious at the committee hearing because there was an explosion by one of these refineries that used the hydrofluoric acid. And so what the EPA did is they said that refineries that use hydrofluoric acid are required under risk management regulations to perform an assessment of safer technologies and alternative risk management measures with respect to the use of hydrofluoric acid. Well, why is that such a bad thing? This bill repeals that and says they don't have to look at alternatives. All they're being asked is to look at alternatives, not necessarily use alternatives. And in the light of the explosion, Mr. McGovern mentioned the Norfolk Southern thing. I mean, we should be worried about these disasters that are hurting people or have the potential of killing people or maiming people. And so let members who want to address some of these health and safety concerns offer their amendments and have them considered on the floor. So again, I think this is a very bad bill. It should be rejected, but at a minimum, I would ask that you have an open rule so a lot of the amendments that I think are common sense could be considered. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.